Welcome to the Mindset Chick podcast. If you are looking to stop settling and want to gain the clarity and confidence to manifest the life and biz of your dreams, then this show is for you. I'm your host, Christy Deer, sharing with you simple yet powerful and effective mindset tips that will allow you to attract more abundance, prosperity, and success into your life. So get ready, get excited, and let's go manifest some amazing things together. Welcome back to the Mindset Chick podcast. I am so happy to have you here. And today I'm really excited because we have a very special guest. Her name is Heidi Easley. Heidi's also been one of my friends for a long time. She was actually one of my clients when I was a personal trainer and taught a women's boot camp for 10 years. Heidi is the owner and founder of Texas Art and Soul and Paint Party Headquarters. She teaches thousands of people how to make money teaching paint parties in person, online, and with art kits. She went bankrupt to business owner before the age of 30. This changed the direction of her life forever. Heidi loves sharing God's love through art and is very passionate about helping women make money with their creative talents. So welcome, Heidi. It is so great to have you.
Thanks for having me, Christy. I am happy to be here.
Yay. Okay, so Heidi, what led you to creating Texas Art and Soul Painting Party Headquarters?
Oh my gosh. So I was a teacher for 10 years and we went bankrupt to business owner before the age of 30. Yeah, that's how bad I failed. Real fun. We went through some kind of crazy times. And so I was an art teacher for about 10 years. And while I was teaching art, it was my second or third year teaching art. And I started painting these surfboards, these little miniature wooden surfboards, just to kind of heal because I, had lost everything. We had lost our house. I had a toddler and just really, just kind of stuck in fear and just scared and overwhelmed and embarrassed. Oh my gosh, I was so embarrassed. I wouldn't tell anybody about it. And so I started painting these little wooden surfboards and I brought them to school, the elementary school I was working at. And we had around 850 kids that would come through my classroom a week. And so I was, I had them sitting on the table and I was going to work on them before school or during lunch. And the kids would come in and they would see them and they just kept going, Miss Easley, you've got to paint me a surfboard, put my name on it. And I'd go, oh no, this is just a project I'm working on. And then about 150 kids, but throughout the day were like, Miss Easley, make me a surfboard. And I started going, finally, God's like hitting me on my head, light bulb. And so I was like, oh my gosh, maybe I can sell these, not to the kids at school, but maybe I can sell these and make some extra money to help my family through this crisis we were going through. And so we ended up setting up, if anybody's ever been to Panama City Beach, I lived there for about 10 years and set up a little area in Pier Park. And so we're getting ready to sell these surfboards and oh my gosh, nobody is buying them, Christy. I'm like, this sucks. How can you fail so much before you're 30? And so my mother-in-law senses my frustration. And there's a Buffalo Wild Wings. It's still there today. And I was in this little concrete slab right in front of Starbucks. And she's like, because what do you do when you fail, and you don't know what to do? You go to Buffalo Wild Wings and you have a drink, right? So we walk across the street and I'm at the bar and I'm having a drink and I'm like, what's plan B? This was plan B. What's plan C? In your late 20s at that time, I did not realize we had so many opportunities. We have so many chances to fail. And at that time, I just felt like, that's it. I failed. Now I've failed again. I'm done for. And so about the second drink in and not really sure where to go, my husband calls and he's like, Heidi, get over here. We have orders. And I'm like, you're lying. He's like, no, we have orders. You have to get back over here. And so I look at my mother-in-law and she's like, go. And so I tipsily walk across the street. It's right there across the street. And this moment I will never, ever forget. My husband's sitting there at this little booth we had put together and he's holding this stack of tickets and he's like, get to painting, Heidi, get to painting. And I just look at him and in that moment, like this will forever change my life. Like I was like flat on my face, like done for thinking, who am I to like start a business? Who am I to like, want more than just the necessities? How dare I, And I felt like God just scooped me up and not only said, like, you're going to be okay, but you're going to get to do what you love, which is painting, which is creating. And so I happily, a little tipsily, painted that entire night. And we went on to sell over 1,000 surfboards in just 2 months, which meant this girl who usually painted one painting a year had to learn how to paint fast. And so we made over 20 grand in just 2 months. And it just changed my entire perspective on what life could be and how we could do this. And now I run Texas Art and Soul. It's a company I created. And I run a membership of over 2,000 women where I teach. It's called Paint Party Headquarters, where now I teach other women how to have their own creative business. And it's just been insane. Like, I would have never dreamed this could have happened. But I looked to that time when I had that bankruptcy and how it just totally changed my perspective on life.
Wow. I love that. Isn't that so fascinating? It's so remarkable that there's times in our life, sometimes that things happen and we say, why is this happening to me? Why am I, failing? Which is really a perception, right? Because are we failing, or is it just a chance to learn and grow and maybe set us up for something bigger and better? But having that time in our life that feels like a struggle, it feels like a challenge, it feels like a failure. But if that wouldn't have happened, then you may not be where you are today, right?
Yeah. I heard something the other day, it may have been on a podcast, but somebody said, it wasn't a setback, it's a setup. And I thought, man, that's so powerful, because for a long time, I wouldn't talk about it. I was very, very embarrassed, very shameful. My parents are really great people in the fact that, they totally we're okay. They always taught us, you can borrow money as long as you pay it back. Like, it's okay to borrow, but just pay it back. So I wasn't really raised where, now I listen to a lot of Dave Ramsey, where I'm like, I don't want debt. Like, I don't want any debt,
Yeah.
But back then, it was always okay to borrow money. Like, that's how you do things. And so when I could not pay back the money that I was owed to people, and we lost our house, and having this, toddler to, and my husband lost his job, and all these things just kept, like a domino effect. Back then, I couldn't figure out why. I mean, obviously we had, struggled and failed at what we had done, but I couldn't figure out why this was all happening. And now I look back and I'm like, thank you, God, that all that happened. I mean, all of that has given me so much perseverance. And now I'm in my early 40s, and I think about how God's grace and how much we're okay to fail and still be able to do really awesome things in this world. So I think it's really powerful to think about it not as a setback, but as a setup, and think about, okay, how can I use what I've gone through now to help other people know that it's not the end? It doesn't mean you have to sit in shame and embarrassment forever. You can still move on from this and have a very, very successful life.
Yes, exactly. I love that. I love that perspective. And sometimes that's like, a nudge, because there's something else out there for us, right? And like, if there wasn't that contrast, if there wasn't that struggle, then, we would probably not search for more. We'd stay complacent. We'd stay in the same spot. But it's that, sometimes that pain, that struggle, that, perceived step back, right? So as a nudge, I believe, to say like, hey, there could be something better out there for you. This is the journey. It's like God's like leading you to something that could prosper you even more. And that's why, it's so good to just lean back and trust. And I love to say that affirmations, like, when I'm talking about affirmations or talking about intention and setting your goals and expecting, the best and expecting more blessings, to say at the end, this or something better is coming my way.
Oh, I love that, Christy. That's awesome.
Oh, thank you. So you have helped so many people make money by creating their own painting biz. So tell me more about how that works and how that makes you feel, knowing how many lives you've changed.
I think, whenever we moved back to Texas, I'm originally, we grew up in Texas and then moved to Florida for 10 years and moved back to Texas. And, when you start doing something and you start doing it a lot, just naturally people start asking, like, how are you doing that? And so I was teaching paint parties and, basically working full-time as a teacher, teaching paint parties on the side. It just kept growing and growing and growing. And so I was really nervous to quit my full-time job, because I didn't want, again, having gone through bankruptcy, I'm a very big believer in if you have a side business, work that side business up until it can replace your income or until you feel comfortable. so, here I was, full-time paint parties, pretty much full-time teaching. And it finally got to a spot where I could quit my full-time teaching job because that salary was bringing in enough. And then people started asking, and I started learning about this online world. And so the crazy thing was, a lot of people will put things in your head, right? A lot of people, are the people that love us the most. I find, I don't know if you find this too, Christy, but
yes,
the people who love us the most are the ones that, you'll have your biggest supporters, but then you'll also have, something that they say that sticks with you. And you're like, and you can't shake it off. And I remember one of my family members said, but what if people stop coming to your paint parties? And I mean, I was dumbfounded. I was like, why would anybody stop coming to my paint parties? I was like, what? And so it just kept gnawing at me, and it kept like, but what if they stopped, and so I went on this search because, around age 35, 36, I picked up reading. I wasn't a big reader until then. And then I discovered self-help books, and I discovered entrepreneurship, and I discovered business, just all these great books about entrepreneurship and business. And I was so hungry for it. And so I started reading and devouring everything I could. And I came across, somebody saying, the millionaires have at least 7 streams of income. And so I started searching for that. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to safeguard my family, and I'm going to have so many streams of income that we will always be okay. So I started really searching, and I came across how to create an online business. And so I started teaching, my first time teaching people how to do paint parties was 10 people. And I ran this 3-month boot camp where I taught these 10 women all over the country how to teach paint parties. And I was just so excited. I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this. They're having paint parties over in Michigan. They're having paint parties over here. And I remember one time thinking oh my gosh, what if this could be bigger? What if this could be something else? Because I could see that it was making these women excited because they could change their family's financial situation, just like I did for mine. And so I just started getting so excited to hear what they were doing. I would share this knowledge that I was desperately seeking. I would share to somebody else, and then they would take action, and they would have results, and they would make money for their family. And I remember, several years ago, one of the ladies was like, I'm a grandma, and this Christmas I bought Christmas presents for all 7 of my grandkids with cash from my paint party money. And I was just those kind of stories would just make me so happy, because I remember one time putting all my Christmas on a credit card. And then after Christmas happens, you're sick at your stomach because now you're never going to have it paid off. So those kind of stories just really helped me. And then I just kept, learning and growing. And I came across my business coach, Stu McLaren, who taught me how to turn what I was doing into a membership. And so that's where Paint Party Headquarters had come to be. And Christy, my wildest dreams were, 500 members. I thought, man, if I could have 500 people, entrusted that I could teach and grow and help them with their online business, because I teach now because, of what has happened last year. I teach now how to do in-person, how to do online paint parties, and how to do art kits. So I really structure it to where people can do stuff online as well. And so my huge goal was 500. I remember writing it down, what if 500 people trusted me to help them? And we're about to hit our 3-year anniversary, and we're at over 2,100 members. And I'm like, what is happening? It's crazy.
That's exciting. So now you got to up level your goal. Right?
I know. Yes. We're having our 3-year anniversary launch, and I'm putting, some numbers in the air, and I have a journal that I write to God. And so I kind of I call it co-creating with God. And I just write my biggest, wildest dreams and my gratitude and all those things. And it's so fun to go back and go, oh my gosh, I feel like it's this magic book. It's what? This has happened. And I think it goes a lot with, you're manifesting where, you start to focus on something and you think about it and you take action, and it can really, really happen.
Yeah, absolutely. I love it. And what I love to say is, sometimes we put limits on things. I mean, we all do, right? Because it seems so big. It seems so impossible. It seems wow, could this really, happen? Is this too much? But I always think if, whenever we put limits on ourselves or what's possible or the money that we can make or the success or how many people could join our memberships or whatever that is, we're putting limits on God. what he can do, because he says all things are possible, not some things, all things are possible. And there's abundance all around us. So I think about that a lot when I'm writing down my goals. Like you said, you're writing down your goals, setting your intention. And if I start to hesitate a little bit, like, oh, is this too much? I just remind myself, okay, what's too big for God? Nothing. There's nothing too big for God.
Right. Oh my gosh. I love that. Yeah. I wrote down, don't put limits on God. That's so true. And I remember too, I have 3 brothers and a sister, and I was visiting my oldest brother, and he's like, and I was telling him, at the early stages of Paint Party headquarters, and I was like, look, and I was showing him on my phone because he was kind of asking about it. And he's like, I don't understand. Like, why are you teaching people what you do? Like, that's your business, And I was like, yeah, but I mean, my whole thing is, my whole mission is sharing God's love through art. I can only teach so many in-person paint parties, but if I can teach other people all over the world, which we have people from France and from Australia, like all over the world in Paint Party headquarters. And I was like, if I could teach other people how to do this, like, again, whether or not they are talking about God or, you can go into a room and share God's love through art without ever saying God's name. And you can show kindness and help people heal through painting, which is what happened to me when I went bankrupt. Is I had to, have my hand in a brush and start painting to kind of start to feel like a real human again. And so I think it's just so important that we teach other people these methods of how to, especially in the artist world, how to like go through when you're going through pain, to not just go to a Netflix series, but actually create and connect. And I know I connect so much to God when I'm creating. And I think it's really, really important to share that message.
That's beautiful. I love that. I mean, you're helping so many people. You're blessing so many people who maybe, had this idea and wanted to do this, just didn't know how to put it into action, or who didn't even maybe have this idea, but wanted to create a more freedom-based lifestyle or bring in some extra money for their family. And you're showing them what's possible, and you're a light to so many. So, I mean, I love it. And I'm so happy for you because, I've known you for a long time, and just to see like the progress and your business grow and the success and just everything that you've created is beautiful.
Oh, thank you so much, Christy. Yeah, it's definitely been a crazy few years for sure. And I think it's just so important that we just find like what it is we love, and then we share that with others. And I think that's been the coolest part about it is, when I felt like back at that moment, standing there, my husband holding those tickets and saying, get to painting. And it was in that moment, I felt like God said, not only are you going to be okay, but you're going to be able to do what you love forever. And that moment, I mean, it has driven so many choices and decisions in my life. And since then, and I think, we have to remember that, we get second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, 20 chances. Like, it's not like, the chances are limited. And so, wherever you're at, whoever's listening, wherever you're at, if you feel like, well, I've done this, so I'm not worthy. It's, like Christy said, don't put limits on God, and you never know where it's going to lead. It's just been pretty incredible. And I'm so thankful to be a part of this ride, honestly.
Yes. And I'm so happy for you. So what would you tell people who are maybe in the same financial situation that you were in, or maybe struggling? Maybe they want to jump in and pursue their dreams as an entrepreneur, creating their own business, but they're scared. They're scared. Maybe they have a family member that, said something to them, kind of like your family member did, or maybe they're saying something to themselves. Like, what would you say about somebody who's wanting to jump, but they're scared, they're nervous?
Oh, man. So I can talk about this all day long because, and one of my favorite books, I highly recommend anybody who has not read Big Magic. Have you read that book yet, Christy?
Yes, I actually have. It's
good. It is so powerful. And yes, there's some cussing in it. So make sure if you're, I've had people go, I can't believe you recommended that. There's so much cussing. And I'm like, but it's a great book, so, if you're nervous about that, we're all adults. You can just skip over the cuss words. But the point is it's so powerful. And the fact it talks about, there's a part in that book that talks about like, a woman in her 20s. And then when you're in your 30s and when you're in your 40s, you're starting to really own who you are. in your 20s, like you're really nervous about what everybody says about you, and then she talks about like when you get into your 50s and 60s, how you start to really feel free. Like you start to finally have that feeling like you don't really care what other people are thinking or saying about you. And so the reason she shares that analogy is like, what if we could learn from those women in their 50s, 60s, 70s and take on some of that confidence and some of that feeling of not caring what other people think of us when we're in our 30s, our 40s. And so when I read that, it was so powerful because she talked about how, people are going to notice. They're going to notice when you fail for a moment, but then their life goes on and they're busy, right? We all have our own lives. We're all our own star of our own life. And so many times we walk around this world thinking that everybody's looking at me. I mean, here's kind of a weird thing that happened. When I was in my 20s, like I've had anxiety since my 20s and I still have it today. I really think it's a blessing more than it is a curse, honestly. But I remember in my 20s, like even going to the grocery store, I would have this weird feeling. And I don't know if any of y'all experienced this, but I would be like, people are looking at me. Why are they looking at me? What are they thinking? Like and I'm like, now that, I don't know if I've just, gotten older or wiser or what, but now I'm like, you know what? They're busy. Like their life, they're thinking about what's going on in their world. They might have a sick mom or whatever. And so instead of like bringing that focus inward and worried so much about like, what if I fail? And what if somebody sees that I failed? Instead, I wear it almost like a badge of honor. Like I know the more times I fail, the faster I'm going to hit success. So let me just go ahead and get a bunch of failures out of the way so I can get to that good one. Before Paint Party Headquarters was as successful as it is, we had what was called Paint Vault. And you probably never heard of it because it was a huge failure. But, I went full blown with that and it was a massive failure. And many, many other failures before Paint Party Headquarters actually took off and became this really awesome thing. So that book, if you've never read it, I want you to read it because it will like release you. And now I feel like I'm this 60 or 70-year-old woman, kind of in a weird way, but in a 40-year-old's body, because I don't care what people think. I just want to live my life. I want to help people as much as I can. And the benefit of that has been obviously financial, but also, friendships and learning and thinking like, oh my gosh, what kind of cool collaboration could happen next? And thinking of this whole entrepreneurship as almost like this really big, fun problem solving game. And because, I've kind of turned it into that versus what is so-and-so going to say about me if they see me doing a live and they think I'm, I don't even care about that anymore. I could care less about that. And I think it just frees you up to not worry about the fear. But I know the fear is real. I was in that for a long time. But now that I've kind of moved past that, it doesn't mean that the fear completely goes away, but you can hush it up a lot faster when you start to just take action quicker.
Yeah, I loved all that. That was so good. And you know what? I want to reread that book because it's been a long time. But I love that because you talked about turning it into fun. And that's something that I talk a lot about with my team. And I talk about like on the podcast, like turning it into fun. And that can, help with the fear. And also like when I started out doing lives, a lot of people may not realize this, but I was so nervous. I used to shake and think, oh my gosh, what are people going to say? What are people going to think of me? Here I am talking about, mindset or giving some tips. Are they going to judge me? And I learned something. I can't remember where I heard this, but I learned that, people get nervous because like you said, they're always thinking that people are looking at them and they're thinking about themselves or thinking about themselves. But what if you turn that into who can I serve?
Yes.
And how can I be a blessing? And so I starting my podcast, I was nervous, and in the beginning of the episodes, like, oh my gosh, I'm putting myself out here. But I turned it, off of me, the attention off of me and said, okay, it's not about me. It's about, who can I serve and who can I impact today or who needs to hear this message that helped me change my life and just the affirmations and things that I've done or the daily habits, like who needs to hear this? And once I turned that attention off myself and asked that question, who could I serve today? It helped so much. It just changed the whole tone.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I always teach that too, to the ladies because, doing paint parties, we get so nervous, we're like standing there in front of a room, or on a Facebook Live. And a lot of times we have that fear of like, oh my gosh, are they judging me? Do they think I'm not a good artist? Because when you're teaching it and you're talking, it's a lot different than you're just, blaring some music and painting, right? Like, you got to do a lot of different things while you're teaching. And I always tell them, I'm like, remember, like if you just take a moment and look around the room, they are all so worried and focused about making sure that they're going to create this painting. So if you stop that attention of like, you trying to be the best teacher up there and more, be in service of how can I really help them find success? And that can, be the same case in anything like your podcast or, going live or whatever, business you're trying to do. When you take the attention off yourself. And I remember doing this party, it was 129 women at this giant church. And I was so excited, Christy, because I got to wear the Britney Spears microphone. And I'm a huge Britney Spears fan. So I was so excited because I was like, texting Bobby, my husband, I was like, I get to wear the Britney Spears mic. I'm like so excited. And so I remember right before it happened, I went into the bathroom and I just kind of like refreshed my makeup and I went into the stall and I was so nervous because I was going to be sharing my testimony before I was going to teach this paint party. And I had just built my nerves up and I was just in this almost panic. And then I went into the restroom stall and I locked the door and just started praying. And I started saying, thank you, God, for this opportunity. Thank you so much that you are allowing me to speak in front of 129 women that, I've never met before. Like, thank you for being able to wear this Britney Spears microphone. Like, this is so cool, and I just started turning it and I just started crying. Like I started crying because I realized that it was so much more about what they were going to hear versus about if I was going to, mess it up. And so I really, really, truly believe that like when we stop, like when we get out of our own head about, us and it being about us and we realize that, we're just doing what we feel like we're supposed to do next. And who we get to help in the process is what it's about. Just makes all the difference in the world. And I know it's really, really helped when I start to get really nervous or on a Facebook Live, now with tens of thousands of people watching on Facebook Lives. Used to, it was just my mom. Now within, a couple hours, it's thousands of people. And it's so funny because like my mom or my brothers or somebody will get on there and they'll say, hey, it's my sister, and I'll say, hey, give a shout out to my brother. And everybody will start like, hey, Mike, hey, so-and-so. And it just cracks up my family because, in the past though, like it was just me and my mom watching, like that's the only one, and then it grows and it gets better, but you have to get through that fear. You have to, no matter where you're at in this, you've got to start at square one. Nobody gets a pass, to just go straight up. And now you have thousands of people watching you. But man, it's so worth it if you can just get out of your own way and just take action through fear, even when you're scared.
I love it. So true. So true. Okay. So what would you say is your most favorite, like go-to quote that you love?
Oh man, I have so many. So I have one on my computer. I'll share this one. This one is on my computer taped and it says, go ahead, suffer, call me when you're done.
Ooh.
I love that because it's so true. We have a choice. Every day we can wake up and we can choose to live this life in optimism, or we can choose to live this life as everything is against us. And we can choose to suffer in this life. Suffering's a choice. We're all going to have bad things that happen. I think for a long time, I went through life thinking like, poor me, like I'm the only one dealing with this. I mean, even through the bankruptcy, I didn't realize till years later that a freaking entire economy crashed. It wasn't just me. I wasn't the only one suffering. Even, with COVID, there's so many people out there right now that are taking the mindset of it's only me, only my business has done this, only my, and they're forgetting that an entire world is going through the same thing. And so I think it's very important that no matter what is going on in life, I know we're going to have ups and downs. I know some days are not going to be rainbows and unicorns, but I think it's very, very important to remember, like we still, no matter what situation we're dealing with, we still have a choice of whether we want to get up and suffer through it or if we want to get up and make something happen. So I have this taped to my computer and it says, "Go ahead, suffer, call me when you're done." And anytime I start to get into that funk of like, poor me, I read it and I'm like, let me go jump on the trampoline for a minute or shake it off,
Shake it off, shake it off. Yeah, jump on the trampoline. I love that. That's so good. And it's so true. And yeah, I'm sure that was helpful to so many. Well, Heidi, I have really enjoyed this conversation with you and just catching up and just hearing about just the success you are having in your business. And I appreciate you sharing all your wisdom and your nuggets. So how can people connect with you more and learn more about your painting parties?
Yeah, this would be awesome. So I'm Texas Art and Soul across all platforms. I do Facebook Lives pretty much 2 to 3 times a week, every week. So you can find me there. I'm also on YouTube at Texas Art and Soul, Instagram, Pinterest, pretty much everywhere. But something really fun we started about 2 months ago. I have an app where you can text me. And then I text you before I go live. So if you want to know like real time when I'm about to do something on my live or paint something or learn, and you can text me at 817-373-5478. And that will just, go into this app. And then sometimes I text back like right away. And then other times, it may be a day later, but I always send a big text right before I go live. So you can catch me there.
That is super cool. I love that. Well, that's great. Well, thank you so much, Heidi.
You're so welcome. Thanks for having me. And it's so great talking to you, Christy.
You too. And remember, friend, to dream big, follow your heart, and never give up on you because you're worth it.
Thank you for joining me today on the Mindset Chick podcast. I hope this show has you waking up every morning excited about the new manifestations you have created in your life. And if you would honor me with a 5-star review over in iTunes, I will happily enter your name in my Mindset Chick swag giveaway. Make sure you add your name to the review and I will reach out to you if you're the winner. I really appreciate you spending your time with me. Be sure to visit me at mindsetchick.com for past episodes and more gifts that will help you to manifest your dreams into reality.